speaking of people and the cohort and learning from people, you taught me about something that I use now in all of my courses, which is speed networking. Not speed dating. I called it speed dating before. Very quickly corrected. Speed networking. So I would love for you to be able to share with the audience more about this tactic, because since I started using this for all of my courses, people love it and rave about it and feel far more connected than when I did not do this for anything. So tell us more about speed networking.
So I think one of the challenges of running an online course is showing people that they are sharing that journey with other people. The Community of Inquiry framework calls that presence. And then, it's this idea that that there are other learners. So if you're doing this in person, it's very easy because you can see the other learners, you can see the facilitators. But if you're doing it by yourself in an online space, you need those reminders. And when we're putting the course together, we have to find opportunities to remind people that they're not alone, and that people have that shared energy or that shared focus. And the speed networking sessions were like a very effective way of doing it. So the way we just run it on Zoom, and we invite 60 to 150 people, depending on how big the cohorts are, to one Zoom speed networking session, and then we have like a big Zoom plan that lets us create a lot of different smaller breakout room sessions. Then we'll create like a bunch of breakout room sessions where there's 2 or 3 people per room, and then send them out for 5 minutes to get to know each other. And when we do the sessions, always like we give them an objective. We don't just say go and talk. We say, introduce yourself, talk about why you're here, and the third thing is to find something you have in common. And I think that finding something that you have in common is quite a nice, easy, low effort quest that you can get to. And then after 5 minutes, time's up, and you come back. And people always come back like, oh, I wanted more time. And I think that's the whole point, is you want people to want more, because then they'll go into the next session, and then so slowly you like, if you from the facilitator's perspective, you'll see maybe like 20% of the cameras are on. And then by the end of the session, like 80% of them are on, because people have really gotten into it, and they come back and you just see them smiling and typing in the chat, and there's a lot of energy. And I think based on the feedback and based on your perspective, or like your impression, I think it's been quite good at creating this presence, and it's like an injection of energy early in the cohort to really get people motivated to participate and to get into it.
Oh, for sure. Because what I've seen within my own courses to be able to share those results is that after the speed networking sessions, then when I go and look at the discussion board posts, I'll see that they'll refer back to that networking session where it'll be like, oh, Cindy, it was so awesome being able to chat with you about your journey and blah, 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 blah. Can't wait to work with you more throughout the next 4 weeks, whatever. And I just see that constantly. And especially too, since for most of our courses, we do incorporate peer-reviewed based activities where you are going to be working with your peers. When you actually know who the person is who's giving you feedback or giving you comments or something like that, it makes that type of feedback so much more receptive, because now you're not as defensive, because you're like, who are you? Why are you telling me to do blah, blah, blah? You're like, no, I met you. I know who you are. Or if I didn't meet you personally, I at least can remember your background, or maybe something you talked about within the session, something along those lines. That has 100% made the communication go from, at one point in time, feeling like it was forced to make people respond to discussion boards, where I was like, someone please talk. It's way too quiet. And then by the end of week 3, I'm like, okay, I don't need to talk. You can do your thing. I'm just here to help with your questions. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, this is something we wrestle with so we've got another course that we've just kicked off. We're doing cohort 2 of it right now. It's called Designing Social Learning Experiences. And this is something we talk about a lot, because in a lot of learning experiences, let's say if you want to set up a community of practice or something, and if it's online, it's very difficult to create this energy and people always talk about participation and engagement, but I think there are a lot of barriers to participation and engagement that we can't see, and that we, like they might not be like, it might not be that people don't have access to the internet or something. They are psychological barriers. And if you are expected to get to know a bunch of strangers on the internet, we need to really, really create. We talk about psychological safety, and we have to introduce all of these mechanics and all of these ways where we can make people feel safe enough to create that first post, for example. I think one of the interesting things to think about is setting the tone in terms of discussion forums and discussions. I've seen some discussion prompts, or like the general tone of a course, especially at like an executive level course, can be very formal. So to want to comment on the space where you've just seen these super formal English writing pieces where people like put in references and citations and everything, I can imagine, like, after reading that, it's very intimidating to create your own post where you just want to say, hi everyone, my name is XYZ and I'm interested in learning about this, and I don't really know about this, even though everyone else has posted about how smart they are. So we in the course design, we intentionally make our language very, very casual. We use like emojis, and maybe we won't write proper sentences and stuff, as long as it's, it might will ensure that it's legible and you can understand what's being said. But it could probably be written better and more academic, but then we'll erode that not necessarily, but we might erode that sense of like vulnerability. So in our communication, we try to set the tone of saying, we model it, like if we want to think about Bindura, like we model a specific way of communicating, and we hope that other people replicate it, and then hopefully it kind of like jumpstarts that sense of safety. And then all of these underlying elements kind of like work together to hopefully foster this environment where we can get engagement, because we can't force engagement. We can try, we can say you have to post this much and you have to write this many words, but it'll be inauthentic to some extent, and it's like trying to motivate with the stick and not the carrot. So we want to really get that internal motivation to encourage people participation, and I think like things like that will hopefully have a big impact. And it's something we're wrestling with and we're trying to learn about at the moment.
I mean, I'm glad you said too, talking about emojis, because when we think about speed networking, I know for some people they're like, well, it's not gonna work for everybody because we don't all communicate in the same way. And we have seen it where people do communicate more via emojis, or they only feel comfortable using with the text chat type of a feature, and we've adapted, and I've learned a lot actually from how you've hosted and handled those things, as far as for making people stay in the main breakout room and having them come into there, and then of course we can facilitate and have a conversation in that place, instead of constantly trying to make people go and either talk about something that they don't want to talk about, or introduce themselves again for the 20th time and have to go and mention about the blah blah blah, where they're like, this is so tiring. And it's like, let's remove those. Let's just make that safe space, and then let's actually dive into the conversation instead.
Yeah.
So that's been cool.